What if that soul-crushing feeling you have every Sunday night, that thick, cold dread that seeps into your heart as the alarm clock prepares to scream on Monday morning, isn't a personal failure? We live in a world that tells us to be grateful for any job, to hustle harder, to climb the ladder, to be a team player. And when we can't, when some deep, honest part of us rebels against the routine, the meetings, the spreadsheets, the endless performance of it all, we are taught to see it as a flaw in ourselves. We think we are lazy, ungrateful, broken. But what if I told you that your hatred for your job, that profound and persistent ache in your soul, might be one of the most sacred, most divine messages you will ever receive? What if that very feeling you've been taught to suppress is, in fact, the voice of God? This isn't a metaphor. This is a theological truth that has been buried for centuries under layers of misinterpretation and cultural conditioning. A truth that, once understood, has the power to transform your suffering into a compass and your despair into a doorway. So, I invite you to stay with me, to breathe through the discomfort, because we are about to embark on a journey, not away from your pain, but directly through it, to find the holy ground hidden beneath. We will travel back to the dawn of creation, walk through the slave pits of ancient Egypt, and listen to the whispers of forgotten prophets, all to answer one burning question: what is God trying to tell you when you hate your job? The answer will change not just how you see your career, but how you see your entire life. Imagine for a moment the world without the weight of the world upon it. Before the noise, before the deadlines, before the relentless pressure to produce. Close your eyes and feel the cool soil under your feet. Picture a garden, not just as a place, but as a principle, a state of being. In the opening chapters of Genesis, we are given a blueprint of our original design. We see Adam, the first human, placed in the Garden of Eden. And what is his purpose there? The text says he is to work it and take care of it. In our modern ears, the word work immediately conjures images of effort, of toil, of something we do to get something else. A paycheck, a promotion, a weekend. But the Hebrew word used here is avad. And this is the first clue, the first thread we must pull to unravel the whole tapestry. Avad does not simply mean to labor. It is the very same root word used for worship, to serve, to minister. Let that sink in. In the beginning, there was no separation between work and worship. Your contribution, your cultivation, your creativity, it was designed to be your prayer. Your labor was your liturgy. It was an act of partnership with the divine, a joyful process of co-creation, of tending to the beauty and abundance of life. There was no boss, only a partner. There was no climbing a corporate ladder, only the deepening of a divine relationship. Your work was an extension of your soul, not a transaction of your time for survival. It was meant to be an act of love. So, what happened? Where did we lose this seamless connection between our hands and our hearts? The common answer points to the fall, to the moment Adam and Eve are exiled from the garden. And it's true, the language changes dramatically. God says to Adam, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food." And here we feel the sting of recognition, the sweat, the painful toil. This feels like our world. This feels like Monday morning. For centuries, this has been interpreted as our permanent condition. The curse of work, a punishment we must simply endure. We are told this is just the way it is. But is that the end of the story? Is God's final word on our labor a sentence of perpetual, joyless toil? Or is this curse not a final verdict, but a description of what happens when we are disconnected from our source? It describes a world where work is no longer worship, avad, but a desperate, anxious struggle for survival against the ground, against nature, against ourselves. It is a world where we work out of fear, not love. And this is the state of discontent. But the story of how work became truly soul-crushing, how it became organized oppression, doesn't stop there. It gets an entire chapter a little later in Genesis. A story we all know, but perhaps have never seen through this lens. The story of a tower. Imagine the scene. A flat plain, a sprawling city, a collective human project of immense scale. The Tower of Babel. The people say, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves." This is humanity's first mega-corporation. Its first soul-crushing monolithic project. And what is its mission statement? To make a name for ourselves. The partnership with God is gone. The joyful cultivation of the garden is a distant memory. Now, the goal is self-glorification, security through human might and uniformity. Come, let us. This is the language of conformity, of a top-down system. Can you feel the modern echo? The pressure to conform to a corporate culture, to contribute to a mission that feels abstract and disconnected from your own heart. Think about the imagery. They are making bricks, standardized, identical units. The individual artisan, the unique creator, is replaced by the anonymous brickmaker. You are no longer a gardener, you are a cog in a great machine. Your value is not in your unique essence, but in your ability to produce another identical brick for the tower. The tower is a monument to human anxiety, a desperate attempt to control our destiny and secure our own legacy. It is work born from fear, fear of being scattered, fear of being insignificant. And what is God's response? It is often seen as a punishment. God comes down, confuses their language, and scatters them across the earth. But what if it wasn't a punishment, but a rescue? A divine intervention to save humanity from its own soul-killing ambition. God didn't destroy the people. He destroyed the Son Projectot. He shattered the monolithic, oppressive system that was turning unique souls into uniform bricks. He broke up the centralized power structure and forced them back into smaller, more human-scaled communities, where their own languages, their own cultures, their own unique ways of being could flourish. God rescued them from the tyranny of the single, all-consuming job. Now, hold that image of the brick makers in your mind. The hum of the machine, the loss of self, the toil for a name that isn't yours. Does it feel familiar? Does it feel like your office, your factory, your cubicle? The legacy of Babel is woven into the fabric of our modern work life. The endless pursuit of growth, the glorification of the institution over the individual, the feeling that you are just a number, a resource, a brick in someone else's tower. This is the spiritual architecture of the work that you hate. It is a direct descendant of that first great project built on fear, and your soul, which remembers the garden, which remembers the design of Avad, of work as worship, cries out against it. That feeling of being trapped, of being nameless, of toiling for a purpose that doesn't feed your spirit, that is your soul rebelling against the shadow of Babel. It is a holy protest. But the story of our liberation from this kind of work, from this spiritual slavery, becomes even more explicit, even more powerful in the next great biblical saga. It is the central story of the Old Testament, the story of Exodus. Picture the landscape now. Not a garden, not a plain, but the sun-scorched land of Egypt. And here, the people of God are not just workers in a bad system, they are slaves. Their condition is the ultimate evolution of the Babel project. They are making bricks again, but this time under the whip of Pharaoh. Their labor builds his cities, his monuments, his empire. It is the definition of meaningless soul, destroying toil. Their work serves only to enrich and empower their oppressor, and the text says, their lives were bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar, and with all kinds of work in the fields. Their lives were burnt bitter fond. It poisoned their very existence. And then, the crucial verse. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant. He heard their dung-groaning cant. He heard the sound of their bitter labor. He heard the cry of the soul being crushed under the weight of pointless work. And this cry, this groan of discontent, is what sets in motion the greatest act of divine liberation in the entire narrative. God's first major intervention in human history on a national scale is not about correcting theological errors or punishing sinners. It is about liberating people from an oppressive economic and labor system. Think about that for a moment. The foundational story of God's relational story of God's relationship with his people is a story about work. It's a story about freeing them from a job they hated. And what is the demand that Moses delivers to Pharaoh? It is one of the most famous lines in Scripture, but we often forget the second half. Let my people go. Why? So they can be idle, so they can retire. Number. Let my people go. Tot, so that they may worship me. Fot. And there it is again, that word. The Hebrew word for worship here is once again, avad. Let my people go, so they can exchange the bitter soul, crushing avad of Pharaoh for the joyful, life-giving avad of God. Let them go from making bricks for an empire to tending the world in partnership with their Creator. God wasn't calling them to unemployment. He was calling them to their true work, their true vocation. So let's bring this all together. Let's connect the dots from the garden to Babel to Egypt and land squarely in your life, right now, in the heart of your own struggle. When you hate your job, when you feel like a slave building someone else's pyramid, enriching a system that doesn't care about your soul, when you feel like a nameless brick, maker in a great tower reaching for a goal that is not your own, you are not being ungrateful. You are not failing. You are not lazy. Your spirit is echoing the ancient, holy cry of the Israelites in Egypt. Your soul, on a deep, primal level, remembers the garden. It remembers that it was designed for a different kind of avad, a different kind of work. That ache in your chest, that dread, that profound and persistent hatred for your toil. That is the voice of God within you, calling you out of your own personal Egypt. It is a divine discontent. It is a sacred signal that you were made for more than just making bricks for Pharaoh. It is a holy groaning that reaches the heavens, and God hears it. That feeling you've been trying to silence is your own personal Exodus story waiting to begin. It is the sound of the divine knocking on the door of your heart, saying, "Let my beloved child go so they may truly worship, so they may truly live." This isn't just poetry. This is a radical reframing of your pain. Your pain is not a problem to be solved. It is a messenger to be heard. It is a prophecy of your own liberation. Having understood this, that your discontent is a divine signal, we must now ask a practical question. How do we begin this journey out of Egypt? What are the tools God has given us to navigate from the land of toil to a land of purpose? The Bible doesn't just diagnose the problem, it provides the cure. And one of the most profound and most forgotten of these cures is a radical concept that lies at the very heart of the Ten Commandments. The Sabbath. We think of the Sabbath as an old-fashioned rule. A day you're not supposed to do things. A religious obligation. But in the context of Egypt, in the context of Babel, the Sabbath is not a rule, it is a revolution. Imagine being an Israelite slave, newly freed. Your entire identity, your entire sense of worth, your very survival has been tied to your productivity. How many bricks did you make today? Did you meet your quota? The whip of the taskmaster is not just an external threat, it has become an internal voice. And now, God gives you a command that is utterly insane from the perspective of a slave economy. He commands you to stop. For one whole day, every 7 days, you are commanded to cease all work. You are to be intentionally, defiantly, gloriously unproductive. This is an act of profound trust and cosmic rebellion. It is a weekly declaration of independence from the tyranny of Pharaoh and the logic of Babel. By stopping, you are stating, with your very body and time, that your value is not determined by your output. Your worth is not in what you produce, but in who you are, a beloved child of God. The Sabbath is a rebellion against the anxiety that drives the tower. Builders, the world screams. If you stop, you'll fall behind. If you don't hustle, you'll be worthless. The Sabbath whispers, "Be still, and know that I am God." It is a forced pause to remember that God is the true provider, not the corporation, not the economic system, not your own frantic effort. The universe does not fall apart if you rest. Your harvest will still grow. Manna will still appear. It is a weekly practice of reprogramming your soul from the frequency of fear to the frequency of faith. How does this apply to you now? In our 24/7 culture of burnout and hustle, the principle of Sabbath is more revolutionary than ever. Your Egypt may be a digital workplace that never sleeps. Your Pharaoh may be the endless stream of emails and notifications on your phone. Your taskmaster may be the internal voice telling you that you are only as good as your last accomplishment. To practice Sabbath in this world is to begin your exodus. It may not mean you can take every Saturday or Sunday off completely, but it means you must begin to carve out sacred time for intentional non-doing. A time where you are not producing, not consuming, not striving. A time to simply be, to walk in nature, to play with your children, to listen to music, to sit in silence, to do something not because it's productive, but because it's beautiful. This practice begins to loosen the grip of the work curse on your soul. It creates breathing room. And in that breathing room, you can begin to hear the other whispers of God more clearly. This leads us to another profound figure, another model for a new way of work, Jesus himself. We often think of Jesus' life beginning at his ministry, at his baptism. We forget the 30 years he spent before that. What was he doing? The scripture tells us he was a tekton. This Greek word is usually translated as carpenter, but its meaning is richer, broader. A tekton is a craftsman, an artisan, a builder, someone who works with their hands, with skill, with physical materials like wood, stone, or metal. Jesus was not a bureaucrat in the Roman Empire. He was not a manager in a large enterprise. He was a craftsman. He understood the rhythm of skilled, embodied, human-scaled work. He knew the satisfaction of taking raw material and shaping it into something useful, something beautiful. His work was likely integrated into his community. He would have known the people he was building for. His labor had a face, a name, a direct purpose. It was the antithesis of the anonymous brick, making of Babel and Egypt. His life sanctified this kind of work. He showed that holy work is not just the work of priests and prophets, but the work of the hands. And then, when his public ministry began, who did he call to follow him? He didn't go to the seminaries. He went to the docks, the tax booths, the places of common labor. He called fishermen, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, men of the sea who understood seasons and patience and mending nets. He called Matthew, a tax collector, someone deeply enmeshed in the economic system of the day. He called them from their work, not to a life of pious idleness, but to a new kind of work, a new kind of avad. He said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." He used the language of their own craft to describe their new calling. Their new job was to be the ultimate act of craftsmanship, the work of healing, restoring, and liberating human souls. They were to build something new, not a tower of stone, but a community of love and justice, the kingdom of God. This new work was characterized by compassion, service, and a direct connection to human need. It was the ultimate restoration of work as worship. So, when we look at Jesus, we see a powerful message. God is not against work. He is against work that dehumanizes, that oppresses, that disconnects us from our souls and from each other. He calls us toward work that is creative, restorative, and rooted in love. And sometimes, to deepen our understanding, we must look beyond the familiar pages of the canon to texts that were cherished by the early followers of Jesus, but were later set aside. Texts like the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is a fascinating, mystical text that describes the journeys of Enoch, the man who walked with God and was no more. It was profoundly influential in the time of Jesus and the apostles. In Enoch's visions, he is taken on a tour of the cosmos. He sees the intricate divine order of creation. He sees angels with specific tasks, stars with specific paths. The entire universe is depicted as a grand cosmic system of purposeful work. Every being, every element has its role, its sacred duty, its avad, in the symphony of creation. It is a vision of work as perfect, harmonious, and integrated. Then Enoch describes the fall of a group of angels called the Watchers. And what is their sin? They abandoned their heavenly posts, their sacred duties. They lusted after earthly power and human women, and crucially, they taught humanity forbidden knowledge. But look at what this knowledge was: the making of weapons, the art of cosmetics, the practice of sorcery. They introduced forms of work that were rooted in violence, deception, and ego. They corrupted humanity's craft, turning it from co-creation with God toward domination, vanity, and the manipulation of others. This ancient story reinforces the central theme we have been tracing. Work becomes cursed, not because it is effortful, but because its purpose becomes corrupted. When it serves ego instead of love, when it builds weapons instead of communities, when it creates deception instead of beauty, it becomes a tool of our own downfall. The work you hate very likely participates in some small or large way in this corrupted system. It may not be as dramatic as forging swords, but it may be work that feels deceptive, that damages the environment, that exploits others, or that simply serves the endless accumulation of wealth for its own sake, a modern form of vanity. Your soul's protest against this is a sign of its attunement to the divine order that Enoch witnessed. It is a sign that you know, deep down, that our work was meant to be part of that cosmic symphony, not a source of cosmic discord. We have journeyed far. We have seen that the hatred of your job is not a personal flaw, but a divine signal, an echo of the groaning of slaves in Egypt. We have understood that the systems of soul, crushing work, are a spiritual inheritance from Babel. We have discovered the revolutionary power of the Sabbath to break the curse of toil. And we have seen in Jesus a model for consecrated, human-scaled, restorative work. We have even glimpsed in the visions of Enoch the cosmic purpose our labor was meant to have. So now we arrive at the most important place, your own heart in this present moment. What do you do with this revelation? Does it mean you should walk into your boss's office tomorrow and quit? Perhaps. For some, the call will be that clear, that urgent. But for most of us, the journey out of Egypt is not a single dramatic event. Remember, the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years before they reached the promised land. This was not a punishment. It was a period of deprogramming. It took 40 years to get the slave mentality of Egypt out of their souls. So be patient with yourself. Be compassionate. Your exodus is a process, not an instant solution. And it begins not with a new job, but with a new posture of the heart. The first step is to practice an inner Sabbath. You must begin to consciously and courageously detach your identity and your self-worth from your job title and your productivity. This is the hardest work of all. When someone asks you, "What do you do?" your soul must learn to answer, "I am a beloved child of God," before it answers, "I am an accountant," or "I am a barista." Carve out those sacred spaces of non-doing, turn off the phone, walk away from the screen, sit in the quiet and just breathe. In these moments, you are not being lazy, you are mending your soul's nets. You are remembering who you are outside of the brickyard. The second step is to listen to your discontent. Instead of suppressing that feeling of hatred or dread or numbing it with distractions, I want you to treat it as a sacred messenger, as an angel from God. Welcome it, sit with it, ask it questions, get out a journal and write to it. "Dear dread, what are you trying to tell me? What part of my soul is being starved in this job? What gifts that God gave me are gathering dust on a shelf? What injustice am I participating in that makes my spirit so sick? What beauty does my heart long to create?" Don't rush for answers. Just listen. The groaning itself is the prayer. Your honest engagement with your own pain is the beginning of your conversation with God about your true calling. The third step is to redefine calling. We have a very narrow idea of what a calling is. We think it's one perfect, shiny job that will solve all our problems. But the Promised Land was not a single city. It was a whole territory where the Israelites could live in freedom and worship God through all aspects of their lives. Your calling is not a specific job title. It is a new orientation of your entire being toward love, creativity, and service, toward your true Avad. For some, this will mean a radical career change. You will begin to plan your escape from Egypt. You will save money, learn new skills, and take a leap of faith into a new field that aligns with your soul. For others, the calling may be to become a